Time, just because this is actually the longest lecture we have. It's take a long time. I'm going to probably jog through a few of the slides, definitely, just so we can get through it. It did take, I think, 3 or 4 sessions initially, and they're all there. So you can always go back and listen to the detailed sessions if you want to. If any of the topics that we are covering in this review interest you, we've covered them in 2 or 3 sessions in the past, and they're all on the group, so you can just ask Abu Ali over here, Muhammad, and he can give you access so that you can listen to them. The design of these lectures is just to review each of the topics individually as a final kind of memory refresher prior to moving on to the second phase, inshallah, of the program. And I covered basically 7 topics. I was initially thinking of covering more, but then we found, alhamdulillah, each session was actually taking a long time to finish, a lot of discussion, it was good. So I cut down in the terms of the number of topics I went through, and I chose the basic 7. So we've talked about the fundamental concept or principle of Iqra. We've talked about activism versus indifference. We've talked about stewardship and service. We talked about jihad, talked about tawheed. And then today we're going to talk about Tazkiyah, and then there's one more that we'll talk about next week, and then I'll be done the review, and inshallah we'll move on to the next phase. So this one here, Tazkiyah, I could have easily put it at the beginning of this review of the topics, the first one, and I still would be quite appropriate to do so. But I left it a little bit later because I feel like a lot of the topics that we talked about at the beginning led one way or the other to an expectation of having something like this in the deen. Meaning, if you understand, if you went with me, or you went over the idea of ubudiyya and istikhlaf and tawheed and jihad, you got a sense that there's a lot of internal work that is required to achieve the concepts that we explained. Like, you can't really achieve any of these concepts if you're not aligned on the inside with them. You can maybe be aligned mentally or intellectually. You can agree with them, but then there's an alignment on another level that needs to happen in order for you to actually be able to practice this stuff and get it done. A lot of us in our lives see certain things to be correct, but yet we don't do them. And see certain things to be completely incorrect, and we still do them. And that kind of discrepancy that exists in our lives, I'm not sure if some people just accept it and go on because it happens so often to them and maybe to others. We just kind of are okay with it. But we shouldn't, because it kind of, to a certain degree, demonstrates a problem. Because it doesn't make sense that you believe in something, but you still can't do it. And you don't believe in something, and you're always doing it. Well, why is that the case? Why is that the case? Because that's why it's not enough for us just to believe in certain concepts. It's actually important that we're able to adhere to them. Well, how do you go from the belief to the adherence? How do you go from, yes, this is right, to here I'm doing it properly? Well, there's actually a gap. It doesn't happen automatically. If it did, then I could just delete this whole section, and there's a part of Islamic law that you could just remove, and life would be much easier. But there's a big gap between these two things, between believing in something and actually being able to practice it appropriately, which is what Tazkiyah is. It's that path. It's that sila. In so many words. There's a lot of different ways of looking at Tazkiyah, but I'm just giving you something to think about. So what is the purpose of prophets or messengers? In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'll go through this quickly. So it's 3 times in the Quran, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the same wordings each time. He said there's 4 things that He sent prophets to do. يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. To do 4 things. These are the 4 things. Number 1, recite the signs of God. This means explain theology. Tell them who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. It's not talking about reciting the verses of the book of the Quran. Ayatihi here is not referring to the verses, or referring to the signs. So meaning letting people know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, who God is. There's no point in doing anything if you don't know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to begin with. Who it is that you're obeying, who is communicating with you, and what does He want, and what exactly is He, and all those questions that you start life out trying to figure out, and then that has to be explained to you because there's no other way. It's not inscripted anywhere else. So prophets would come and explain who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and hopefully that knowledge of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu will do the trick for you. The second piece is purify them. So teach self-purification, which is what this whole lecture is about. And then number 3 is teach them the book, which is the rulings, the commands, what to do and what not to do. And then وَيُعَلِّمُهُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ, and then teach them the wisdom, meaning the proper application of these rulings. It's not enough just to know what to do. It's important to know how to do it and when. And there's certain details that you have to also understand in terms of what you're going to do, because not every single command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives is going to be practiced at every given moment in the exact same way. There are details which is what the wisdom is. So these are the 4 reasons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent prophets. And we spend a good amount of time doing all of them. So if you look at them, these are what they are. So who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, That is basically aqidah, theology. And then self-purification, this is tazkiyah, this is what we're talking about today. Islamic law, which is fiqh, and we do a lot of that. And then how to practice that law properly, which is suluk or akhlaq, in terms of the values and how you're supposed to go by them. So all these stuff, we end up spending a good amount of time actually learning. Like you attend sessions for them, you learn them at school, you go through lectures and you go through series, and they are talked about and addressed. Probably the least one talked about is tazkiyah. It really is. It's not talked about that much. I could be wrong. Your experience may be different than mine, at least growing up. But I found that it wasn't. I had to actually go search it out to find people who are able not only to talk about it, but are also able to educate and teach and implement and be an exemplify for you, because really that's what you need. You need the example. So that's what. So you can see I'm trying to convince you that it's a very important thing. There's not a secondary concept, which is what I do in all these sessions. At the beginning, I just try to explain to you why I chose this as one of the 7 topics I want you to learn, because they're very important. That's why we spent a long time talking about why jihad. We had to talk about that. Why tawheed? Why qiyam? Why ubudiyya? Why istikhlaf? These aren't simple ideas or secondary or tertiary topics that we can talk about later. No, these are fundamental. They are critical. They're integral to Islam as a whole. You have to know them. You can't afford not to. Certain things you can afford actually going through life as a Muslim, never knowing about, never understanding, never ever talking about them, not even know how to practice. There's certain things you can totally get through your life and still do well Yawm al-Qiyamah. But other things, no. You have to understand, because they're the basics. And this is one of the basics. This has to be a topic that is properly understood, because the Quran talks about it a lot. And you can see it's one of the reasons Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent prophets. You take a look, I don't know why it's not listening to me anymore. Go now? Okay. A good example is Surah Al-Shams. When we attempt to convince you, He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're probably the only place in the Quran where He makes 11 consecutive oaths in a row. 11 consecutive oaths. 11. الشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها. سماء وما بناها, that's 2. والأرض وما طحاها, that's 4. Now ونفس وما سواها, that's 11. فألهمها فجورها وتقواها. He says all these oaths. He's making one oath after the other with everything that He created around you that you see, that you can't control. Just say at the end, أفلح من زكاها. Those who purify will succeed. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Those who fail to purify will be disappointed Yawm al-Qiyamah. And the word disappointed on its own is a lecture. But just you can just stick to that first piece there. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Those who purify themselves will succeed, will find success in this life and in the hereafter. He made 11 oaths in a row to tell you that one piece of information. He didn't need to. He could have told you the information right at the beginning and you still have to believe it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually made 11 oaths in a row. And He never does that unless it's important. If I made 1 or 2 or 3 oaths to you, you would really want to know what's going to come next. You'll take it very seriously. But if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making 11 in a row, I can't imagine the importance of what's going to come next, which is the whole point of this surah. It's just talking about one thing, the importance of self-purification. He says, عليه الصلاة والسلام, إن الله لا ينظر إلى أجسامكم ولا إلى صوركم ولكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم وأعمالكم. He's not interested in the way that you look. He's not interested in your looks or what you wear. He's interested in what you do in your heart. As he said, عليه الصلاة والسلام. رأيت الناس, حاتم would say رحمة الله عليه, رأيت الناس يرجعون إلى المال والحسب والشرف وليست بشيء فنظرت إلى قوله تعالى إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم فعملت في التقوى لأكون عنده كريما. People care about their background, their family, their wealth. And then he said, I looked into the deen, all I found was taqwa. That's the only thing that I found that had any value. So I worked on that so that I can be in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala someone of worthy or someone of value. And the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام says, ألا إن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسد كله وله القلب. Indeed, there is a small part of the human experience that if it's fixed, then everything else will follow, and if it's ruined, everything else will follow as well. It's the heart, and this is referring to tazkiyah and self-purification, as I will explain to you very, very shortly, inshallah. And why is this important? Because of this. This is why this is important. Like if you still don't, it's important whether you understand why or not. But here's why. Why? Because رب صائم ليس له من صيامه إلا الجوع والتعب. ورب قائم ليس له من قيامه إلا السهر. I mean, there's going to be people who fast. All they get out of their fasting is the fact that they were hungry that day. There are people, والعياذ بالله, نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى السلامة. Some people will perform قيام الليل. They'll pray all night. All they'll get out of it is that they stayed up late and were tired the next day. That's it. There's nothing else. They don't take anything else out of it. Nothing was offered to them. Why? Because there's something missing. Because deeds, it's one thing to do them, it's another thing for them to be accepted. That's a whole different ball game. How do you we don't know. None of us can actually swear that or be certain at any level or to any degree that any of our deeds were accepted. If you know for sure, if somehow you know that one of your deeds are accepted, you don't need to attend this. Go home. Go home, you're fine. if anything is accepted, anything at all, if you can swear that anything you've done has been accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then honestly, don't stand here another second, or come take my spot. Because none of us do. I don't know either. None of us do. There's no way to know. There's no way to know that any of your deeds are accepted. There is no way. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left that till Yawm al-Qiyamah. This is the whole point. And since we don't know any of our deeds are accepted, we continue to work as hard as we can. We try to increase the quality and the quantity, that hopefully in Yawm al-Qiyamah, one of our deeds are going to be accepted. Because once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts a good deed from you, He'll never reject you afterwards. But there's this problem, that there's a possibility that deeds are completely rejected. Why? Because they lack tazkiyah, they lack purity. They weren't done for the right reason, not the right way. There's an aspect there that's missing. So here's some nomenclature just for you to kind of follow along. And this is important because you need to understand this from the Quran. I tried to put the Arabic words here, but I completely failed. I don't know why PowerPoint does not like me, the Arabic that I try to use. So here's the words that you need to know. So the spirit in the Quran, if you want to make your own list, spirit is a ruh. Right? Whenever you see the word ruh, that's what spirit is. Soul is the nafs. A soul is called the nafs. Consciousness and subconscious. And the conscience are three things that are similar, but they're different. So conscience is what they call, in Arabic, they call it al-damir. But really in the Quran, it's not called that. It's called the nafs al-lawwama. That's what it's called. That's the only time you're going to find it referred to. And the subconscious, which is the al-qalb. And then the consciousness is al-fu'ad. So these are the words that are used in the Quran. Each one is different. And the nature of the soul and the conviction of the soul are just things you have to kind of understand that they're different. The soul has a nature and also has a certain number of beliefs that is programmed right into it. And understanding each of these is very important. Now if you want to go, I'm not going to go through all of them because that will take literally 4 or 5 hours. So what you're going to do if you want to know all this stuff, you just go to our Facebook page and you'll look for the playlist of the empty space. That's what you look for. And there's 7 episodes you can listen, and I talk about each one on its own. I explain what they mean and what they are. What you need to know, what you need to know is that the soul, the nafs, is basically what happened when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put together the soil of the earth and the spirit. See, the ruh, we never understand really what the ruh is. The ruh is something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the nafkh of Allah, is the breath of Allah. What does that mean? No one knows. There's no way to understand that, to describe it, to imagine it. There is no way. It's something from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's very sacred. That's what the ruh is. The ruh touched the body which is coming from the soul of the earth, the mud of the earth. Together, life started, and then something was born when the union of the spirit and the soul of the earth came together. That thing that was born is called a nafs. Very interesting, very specific, very unique. Nothing is like it, and it's something that you have to learn to deal with and to tame and to actually control, because it has specific convictions and specific beliefs. That nafs that you have, the soul inside of you, has all the instincts that you have come from that soul. That selfishness and that ability to survive and that desire to be superior and desire to achieve, that comes from the nafs. These are very healthy things. You're supposed to be like that. Like you're supposed to be, like if you have a 1-year-old, and you see these things in children, if you want to know where this stuff comes from, just look at toddlers, or look at, they all basically function on the instincts and convictions and the natures of their souls. They just do that's why they're very selfish. That's why they don't like sharing. That's why they're not patient at all. That's why they get upset if they don't get all the attention that's offered, because that's what they want. And that doesn't go away. You're still that same child deep inside. Like deep inside, that doesn't really change. You just learn to camouflage it a little bit better, and you find out socially it's inappropriate to behave in certain ways, so you just stop doing it. But deep inside, that need is still there, that desire is still there, unless you understand what Tazkiyah is. You just actually start working on purifying the soul from some of its bad habits and then redirecting those habits as something that is beneficial. But you need them. Without that you couldn't survive. If it wasn't for the fact that the soul wants to be superior and wants to be better, then the children don't grow up normally, and they can't learn, and they don't really gain anything. So it's important to have that. We're not trying to kill the nafs. God, no, you definitely need it. You're just trying to tame it and teach it and purify it. So it allows you to practice what you believe, right? We just go back to that initial thought. You believe something, you want to practice it. Well, your nafs is somewhere in the middle, doesn't like it. It knows you believe something, it doesn't like it. It's not on the same page. It doesn't agree with you. Because the nafs can't understand anything that is not self-serving for it. It can't. It does not have the ability. It can't understand something that it doesn't understand delayed pleasure. It definitely does not understand pleasure after death. 100 does not comprehend that whatsoever. It can't understand why the heck you would do something that does not self-serve you. It doesn't understand it. Why are you doing something to help someone else? And there's nothing in it for you at all? Nothing? It doesn't understand that. That makes no sense to it at all. So look for something that allows it to justify why it is you're doing something for someone else. We'll be praised later. Or maybe it'll find something. It gets even more complex later on. But it'll find something to satisfy itself. Because it can't understand philanthropy or altruism. It doesn't understand it. So you who know that that's the right thing to do, that this is what, if you have more, you give it to others, and you're not looking for anything in return. You have to be sincere. You're not waiting for people to praise you. You're not trying to gain status with this. But your nafs doesn't like doing that. That's why there's a lot of different acts of worship and acts in general in life that are difficult to do. They're difficult to do. We don't do them. That's why poor people are still poor. You see, poor people don't really offer much status to people who do good things for them. They don't have much to offer. That's why it's not like we don't have enough food in the world or enough clothing. No, we do. It's just that we don't have enough Tazkiyah so that people actually go and take care of those who need it. You take care of those who have something to give you in return. It makes more sense. For the nafs, it does at least. I'm going to help you. You must have something to offer me. What is it you have? When you go to work with people who are underprivileged, who have nothing, there's nothing for them to offer you. They're offering you nothing. That's why politicians only go and work with the poor just before elections. That's where they get a little bit more. Because that's when there's something to offer. They can vote. They can vote till we go do something. And after they vote, that's it. They're on their own again for another 4 years. But that's the problem. The problem is that there's no reward. Nufus that have tazkiyah in them don't look for that. They're okay to just do the good regardless of whether there's something back from it. But you have to understand these concepts are Quranic, meaning these words that I'm giving you here. يعني الروح والنفس والفؤاد والقلب والنفس اللوامة. These are all in the Quran, and they're used heavily, and they're repeated a lot. They're talked about, and they're pointed out, and they're explained. That's why you have to actually learn the Quran properly so you can fully comprehend all of these ideas. But you need to spend time learning this stuff so you can take a step forward. So again, this is complex. I don't act like I can't summarize it for you in 5 minutes. But you can go back to the series and listen to it if you actually want to learn a little bit more about how they work and where they fall. And they're not very complicated, believe me. And then the vicious and virtuous cycles, I believe, that exist in life. And I think they're very simple. If you go to any psychiatrist, he'll just draw this up on a piece of paper and show it to you. Because it's very simple. Everyone should know this. Every psychologist says this is like their bread and butter. It's very simple. These three things affect each other. They affect each other in every direction. Your actions, your feelings, your thoughts. There are three things. Here's the problem. You control these 100%. Your actions, 100% under your control. 100%. Your thoughts, 60, 70% are your control. Your feelings, 0% your control. So here's the problem. There's something that you have no control over. Something you have full control over. Something you have a little bit more than half control over. So if you want to affect something, so if your feelings, if you like something, you're more likely to be kind to them, think good about them, which will later on make you feel more about them, and that just keeps on going. So a good feeling can generate a good action, can generate a good thought, will also generate a good feeling, strengthen that good feeling, and that cycle keeps on going up and up and up. So that's how we end up, really admiring someone or loving someone. Or the opposite. If you hate someone, if you don't like them, then you can do something bad to them, which will generate more bad thoughts, which will increase the bad feelings, and that vicious cycle just keeps on going. Unless something comes here and breaks it. You have to break one of these. You have to change. You have to turn it around. How? Well, you can't control your feelings, which is important to understand in Islam. You're not required to control your feelings. You can't. It's not possible. If you don't love something, you don't. And if you like it, you like it. There's nothing to do about that. That's there. So that's there. We just put it aside. It's there. It's there. I don't know. I can't do anything about it. It's there. I have to work on what I can change, because I can't change that. That's just there. I like fulan, or I don't like them, or I like this, or I don't like it. What you can change is what you do and how you think about something. Those two things you have pretty good control over. Now, these thoughts, the amount of control you have over your thoughts increases with time. Like when you're really young, you have maybe 60%. When you're older, you have a bit 80. When you're around 40 years old, you almost have 100% control over your thoughts. I mean, you can choose how you look at something because you've learned all the tactics of how the human brain actually works. So you control the majority of your thoughts. So these two things become under your control. So if you don't like something and you want to change that, then you change the way you think about it. That affects the feelings. You change the way what you do about it, and that changes the feelings. And then with time, you find that those feelings will start to change in one direction or the other. The same thing goes for affecting actions. If this action I'm not doing much, well, it's because I'm not thinking about it right, and I don't feel towards it the right way. So if you don't pray a lot, it's because your feeling towards prayer aren't very good, and you're not thinking about it positively, so it's not going to happen. It's very simple. It's very simple. This is like the simplest thing in the world. It works all the time. Like it's never failed, ever, not once. It always works. If it doesn't work, then you need to actually speak to a psychiatrist. This always works because it's always there. It's very simple. So if anything that you're not doing, you want to do it, then you have to change your feelings, you have to change your thoughts. Well, you're like, well, my problem is two things. I don't do it and I don't like it. Very good. Then the thought process has to be emphasized heavily. Like if you're not doing it and you don't like it, now you have two things, two against one. So you really have to emphasize that thought process. You have to really spend a lot of time figuring out why it's important to do this and why this is going to make a difference for you. That's why we do a lot of teaching. I can't do this piece for you. You have to do that yourself. I can maybe help with this. Help with how to understand things, how to comprehend them, how to look at them, the views, the perspectives, the thought. I can do that. And if you take enough time reflecting and contemplating what you're listening to, then hopefully those thoughts will become strong enough that they'll influence everything around them, and then slowly things will get better. And then if you force yourself a little bit, if you have some discipline, and you're able to say, no, we're doing it. I know you don't like it, we're going to do it anyway. Then the thoughts and the feelings and the thoughts and the actions all come together, and the feelings with time will change. They always do. It's just a matter of time. And we know that because just the experience of life itself just kind of forces it. People who don't like each other up front, or the way they seem that they don't, if they've been around each other long enough, once one of them actually removes themselves from the other person's life, there's a gap. There's a gap. There's something missing, and you miss them. And you feel bad, and you wish that you treated them better. Especially family. If there's a sibling, or an aunt, or a great uncle, or a grandfather, or a parent, or a son, or a daughter, that you, for some reason, have a lot of problems with, you still do like them. You just don't know it yet. You just because you spend enough time with them, enough actions, enough history, you've spent enough time doing it that it means something to you, even though there's a certain aspect of your experience with them that you don't enjoy or you don't fully embrace. So we know these things are real in the world. Like we know that they're totally there. It's just a matter of the fact that we don't like these are so powerful and we have no control over them. It just becomes difficult. We don't want to. The nafs doesn't like doing it. It's too much work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of labor. You have to spend a lot of hours working on, because this feeling is there, and it's like you have no access to it. It's like it's this thing that's making you, it's pushing you in a direction, and you have no way to turn it off or to switch it off or take it away or get rid of it, or you can't. So you have to spend time doing these two things that you can do, which is your thoughts and your actions, which is what Tazkiyah really is. That's why the tasbihat and the dhikr and the qira'at al-Qur'an and the suhbat al-salihin and spending time with good, these are all actions you can do. And you do these actions, well, you end up hearing things that are helpful, so your thoughts are so you're doing the right thing, you're hearing the right stuff. With time, you will like the thing that you didn't like before, that you know you should. Again, it all comes back just from the fact that you know this is the right thing to do, but you're just struggling with it. You can't seem to get it done. You know it's the right thing. I know I have to do this. I don't know why I can't seem to do it. Well, because these other two things aren't doing well. So feelings are influenced by the subconscious, the heart. The heart is basically what does it. You can't directly control it. The heart is like this basin that everything, all your senses are just pouring all of its input into it. So what comes through your eyes and your ears, what you think, and what you smell, all the senses that you have and the thoughts are just basically pouring into this basin. And this basin is this huge mixing pot. That's what the qalb is. And it's just being mixed around, and whatever is in it is going to end up. So if you're pouring haram from the ear, and haram from the eye, and haram from the mind, and haram what do you think is going to come out, Yani? What do you think is going to come out? Like it's pretty simple. So they say if you mix it, a mix will come out. And if it's pure of one thing, that thing will come out. So it's very simple. You look at something that is helpful. You listen to something that's helpful. You're in a place that you're surrounding your thoughts. Then now the good stuff is all there. So the mixing pot is actually mixing good stuff. So the output, the output is going to be something that's going to be helpful to you. It's very simple, and that's not that difficult. Yes, it's difficult because you're going to have to start censoring what you listen to and what you look at and who you spend time with and what you think about. You have to start actually controlling this stuff a little bit. You can't be out there in the open for whatever. You can at some point. At some point, once you're very solid, when these things have been taken care of and you have control and you know what, then maybe you can expose yourself a little bit more for learning purposes. But at the beginning, no. You have to censor your surroundings so you can actually get what you want, because there's a part of you. There's a part of you working against you. Your soul is working against you all the time, and your qalb is out of your control. It's not something you can say, okay, no more. I don't want to like that anymore. It's not going to listen to you. It doesn't care. It's going to continue to do whatever it wants until you influence it with the tools that you have, with your thoughts, with your actions, and with what you allow actually to come into it, what you allow to affect it from what you hear and see and smell and feel and all that other stuff. So the stages of taming the nafs. This is where we all start. We all start with stage of submission to the soul. That's children. Children are like that. They do whatever they feel like. They don't listen. And then you spend, if you're a parent, you spend the first maybe 5 years trying to explain to them to follow rules and listen. Don't do it. Yesterday, wallahi, my son Hamza was carrying a cup at the top of the stairs, 1.5 years old. He's carrying it. I know him. Don't do it. Don't you do it. He's standing there. Don't you do it. He throws it. He breaks it. I yell at him, and he cries for a few hours. But they just can't. They'll do it anyways. They don't listen because that's what they want to do. For whatever reason, they feel this is going to be fun, interesting. Something's there. Something self-serving. They do it. They're not willing. They don't understand yet how to control, how to say no, how to say okay, this is not going to work. They don't know. That's why we use fear, because fear works on children for a while. It doesn't work for a very long time, but it works for a little bit of time. But it's there. It's something you need. Even as you grow up as an adult, fear is there. Fear, along with desire, along with love, along with intellect, all that, you use that to motivate yourself. So it's okay to motivate yourself with fear sometimes. It's not wrong. The problem is to use it as fear is a good short-term motivation. It's not a good long-term motivation. Like a short-term motivation works for you. Like right before the ma'asiyah, you remind yourself of Jahannam. You'll step back. But you can't motivate yourself long-term in the service of Allah with Jahannam. It doesn't work. You have to use something different for that. But short-term is amazing. If you remind yourself of adhab, the moment you're just before you actually commit the sin, it'll take you a step back because fear is a strong motive. And you learn to kind of use these different motives to help yourself move forward. So you start with the stage of submission of the soul. And then you get a bit older, so you start to struggle. So it becomes a struggle. That's where they're 6, and you tell them to do something, and they're struggling. They want to do what they want to do, but you told them if you do it, they're going to get grounded, and then they know that they're going to get yelled at. So they're going back and forth. You can watch the kids. Wallahi, if they're not seeing you, you can watch them literally physically struggle with the thought. Like they're not sure. They want to do it. They don't want to do it. And it takes some time to learn exactly what they're going to end up doing. We all have the same problem. Like at the beginning, you don't pray at all. And then you start struggling with it. So you start getting up for Fajr. And one day you do it, and the other day you don't. The other day you do it. And then you do it again, and then you don't do it. And then you do it for a while, and then you don't do it. But you're struggling. You're trying your best. This is not bad. It is not bad. The struggle is not a bad thing to be in. Like at least because this is a musibah. This is where you're completely lost and you're going to be. It just doesn't work. But the struggle, okay, you're there for a while. Hopefully you move to the next step and you're in coercion. Coercion is where your nafs you have control. You don't care anymore. You do what you want to do. Your nafs doesn't want to do it. It's completely against it. It hates every part of it, but it's doing it because you are very firm. You've learned to be firm and you don't listen. Even though you don't want to do something, you do it anyways. You don't want to go to school, you don't want to go to work, you go anyways. Every single day. You're not absent one day. You're there every day. But if it was up to you, you would never go. Like if you didn't have to go, you would never go. But you're going every day. You're not missing a day because you've learned to coerce yourself to do the right thing or the thing that you know is you need to do. It's fine. And then after that, a stage of acceptance. So your nafs actually stops fighting back. It accepts. It's not happy, but it accepts. It gives up. It stops putting up the struggle altogether. Coercion is still struggling, but you're firm. You're able to actually get what you want done. It's not able to beat you anymore. But acceptance is where the nafs gives up. Khalas, it's fine. It doesn't mean that it's fully engaged. It just stops arguing with you on this issue and understands you're going to do it, whether I like it or not. I'm not going to waste my energy fighting with this person about what they're going to do. And then the high stage, the stage of love, is where your nafs actually learns to love what it is that you're doing. Right? So most people are stuck in one of these three here. Depending on how old you are and what experience you've had in your life. You're stuck with it. The problem is if you're stuck there for a long time, you're more likely to regress than progress. If you're stuck in one of them, you're more likely to regress than progress. You're not likely to progress. Unless you are working very hard, unless you are putting in the time and the effort and you're actually learning Tazkiyah. If you're just stuck there, meaning you've learned to coerce yourself to do it, you're more likely at some point to lose that after a while because you have to move forward. You have to go from coercion to accept. Your nafs has to learn to accept it and stop fighting back. If it's still fighting back, you will put up that fight and you'll coerce it for a long time. But then if it's still fighting, you'll lose that fight and it'll win again. Because what the nafs is good at is longevity. It's good at that. It's in the long haul. It's in it for the long haul. It doesn't give up very easily. It'll put up the fight for a long time. So you have to outlast it, and you also have to learn how to maneuver. I mean, you have to learn how to actually affect your thoughts and affect your actions and influence your feelings and watch all of that. And it's like you're raising a child, but you're just raising a child on the inside that's with you 24/7 and influencing a lot of your decisions and your choices. So the goal is to get to this highest stage up here. A lot of people don't, but it's very, very possible. And once you arrive at that, once you actually love what you do, once salah goes from a struggle or a coercion, or your nafs just gave up, so it turns into a habit, you actually are able to come to the point where you love it, where you actually enjoy it, you look forward to it. Huh? Imagine that, looking forward to it. Like you look forward. Like some of you probably look forward to the concept of Taraweeh in Ramadan. The concept of Taraweeh has looked forward to, not the actual prayer, rak'at. The concept itself is looked forward to, right? Because you've learned to love something regarding it. Maybe not the actual rak'ah, but something about the environment, something about the vibe is there that you look forward to that. But then when the actual rak'ah is there, if the imam goes like 3 ayat more, you're already cursing them on the inside. The make ruku, and then you come up to me and say, hey, write a half a page more. So what? What's the big problem? Everyone gets all upset about these things. It's just a half a page or 2. What doesn't matter? It doesn't matter. But the problem is that yes, the concept is likable or lovable, but the actual action is not yet, which is the beauty of Ramadan. It gives you that boost. Here, love the vibe. Hopefully you can learn to love the action if you do the right things, but if you don't, that's basically your choice. But stage of love is what you're trying to achieve, is to love what you do and to love it like the Prophet ﷺ and the prophets before him and all the great Sahaba who came after, all the great awliya and ulama and arifin ended up loving what they did, and they did it because they wanted to do it. Aside from the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them to do it, but they actually wanted to do it. They enjoyed it. They couldn't imagine their lives without it. So that's possible, but you have to work up this ladder a little bit. So it's possible to stay in any level permanently or either moving upwards or downwards, unless you make a detour by reducing concepts. So this here is something I'll talk about later on. There is a detour. It's funny enough, the nafs has found a way to not allow you to move up or down, but to kind of take a little bit of a sidestep and throw you off completely, where it reduces a concept, where it teaches you, okay, we'll do salah. We'll do it. No worries, don't fight you anymore. But we're going to do it completely meaninglessly. We're going to get into a nice routine of thinking of completely different things. And I've memorized the movements for you, so don't worry. You will by impulse just move up and down, and your tongue will say the words, and we can focus on something else in the meantime. So the salah it's reduced. The concept of salah itself, of the act of worship, is reduced from what it is to just a mechanical couple of movements as you think about food and falafel or whatever else you want to think about. Same thing goes for siyam. It goes from an act of fasting, of reducing your consumption and building empathy, and to just overeating at night. It's a detour. It's just moving. So you'll do it, but you're doing it only with a different concept. You're promising yourself to overeat later on, so it becomes more of just the joy of overeating at a certain hour, rather than embracing hunger, embracing that and the empathy that comes with that, and the zuhud that's supposed to be in your heart when you do it. So reducing concept is something we'll talk about, inshallah, later on in this program. But there is a detour here that you should be aware of. The acts of worship of the qulub, ibadat al-qulub, so the inner acts of worship. They are so it doesn't matter which scholar you listen to, or who he is, or what school of thought he follows. There's very little difference of opinion on the fact that they see ibadat al-qulub to be more important than ibadat al-jawarih. And this is like almost a universal statement, that the acts of worship of the hearts are more important than the acts of worship, the physical acts of worship, or equal. And this is something that almost all scholars agree to, regardless of whether they're scholars who focus on tazkiyah or not, because they know that without ikhlas or sincerity, without khashya reverence, without rida acceptance, without fiqh trust, without tawakkul and taqwa and hubb and love, then none of the acts of worship that you're doing have any essence or meaning to them, and they don't really add up to anything. That's why this has been talked about almost in every major, outside of books of fiqh, obviously, because fiqh doesn't really, unfortunately, the books of fiqh that we have don't really focus on these things. They just focus on the mechanics, and we teach fiqh in a way that's only on the mechanics, so people don't really learn this stuff. But the books of fiqh are actually designed just to talk about the mechanics, just understand the mechanics, but you should be also, on the same time, studying tazkiyah, so you learn the essence of why you're doing what you're doing. So when you learn how to pray and the movements and what to say, then there should be, the next step is actually learning why and how and what you're supposed to be thinking, what the meanings are. And that's supposed to be a second movement in terms of, or the second step or a next step in terms of learning fiqh. So fiqh, you're supposed to just learn the mechanics, but that's not the end of it. That's just the beginning of it. That's so that we can actually talk about why you say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim wa bihamdihi, or why it is you do tashahhud, or why it is that you recite the Quran, not to stop there and move on. But these acts of worship are extremely important, and you should have a good amount of you spend a good amount of your time learning them and practicing them and trying to implement them in your life. What does it mean to be to revere? What does it mean to be sincere? What does it mean to have tawakkul? So no acts of worship are accepted without the proper state of heart. We know that. That's known. Without the proper state of heart, your acts of worship aren't really accepted. Which is why, we know very clearly in the deen that intentions matter. Isn't that the beginning of every book of hadith? Or almost every worthy book that was ever written Islamically? Always the first hadith is what the Prophet, Umar ibn al-Khattab, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إنما الأعمال بالنيات. Your deeds are only valued or viewed or accepted or whatever you want to figuratively understand it based on intentions. And then we spend a good amount of time talking about intentions. Everyone yawns and gets bored and wants the next thing to go on. But really, this is like so important. Intentions. Why you're doing what you're doing. Why is it? What's the reason? What's the motive? When you got up to do it, what were you thinking? Sometimes you forget. Sometimes you've masked it and you've layered it so well that you don't even know why you're doing what you're doing anymore. You've completely just checked out and you went into this default mode of just doing things with no understanding, with no real recollection. And that's why it's important to take to stop and just take a step back and think for a moment. Why am I doing this? What's the point? I could be doing anything else at this moment. Why am I doing this specifically? And then you renew your intention and figure out the motive for it. And if you can't figure it out, then you have to go and ask and learn and work on that, because that's very important. You stand for prayer, but why? Why are you doing it? That can't be, don't default that. Don't default, especially the big acts of worship in your life. We talked about the umbrella concept before, where if you're living for Allah, all the small stuff just kind of align. But you need to remind yourself of this. Like the umbrella concept doesn't work if you don't perform these reminders, if you don't take time to actually perfect your intentions properly. What's more common to talk about or more beneficial to talk about, I find at the beginning, before we talk about the acts of worship of the heart, like before I talk to you about sincerity and achieving that, and talk to you about rida and thiqah and tawakkul and all these and khashya and all these very important Islamic acts of worship, there's a lot of them. I think the first thing we do is we talk about the diseases of the heart. The scholars used to say takhliya thumma tahliya. So you get rid of the bad stuff and then you insert the good stuff. So you want to remove ostentation and seeking people's recognition, and then put ikhlas instead of it. You can't really bring ikhlas into something that's all you mucked up with a lot of riyah. You have to scrape out all the riyah and get rid of it, and then you have to put something else in its place. So it's getting rid of some of the amrad al-qulub first. That's you're definitely going to need to do in your life if you want to be able to substitute them with something that's pure and is meaningful. And again, you're not beating your soul down. You're just taming and redirecting. That's all this is. You want your nafs to be healthy and strong and prosperous and ambitious. You want all that. You just want to do it for the right reason. You want to have the right concept behind it so that it actually it matters to you for you Yawm al-Qiyamah and is done properly. So I'm just going to go through some of these acts of some of these diseases. The first four are the major four. They're each their own series of lectures, really. Talking about the examples that exist in the Quran, talking about the examples the Prophet ﷺ explained and offered, and then understanding exactly how to get rid of them. It's not simple, but they're very important. And this is really what you should spend a good amount of time and a good portion of your life trying to comprehend and then trying to get rid of, because this makes a big difference for you. Being vain, wanting all the attention to be, it's not just attention, it's all the praise to be for you. I mean, you feel that everything you do is amazing, and you're worthy of praise, and that you're unique in the way that you think, and that you're very rarely wrong, and you have the right. That need of praise, that spotlight wanting it to be on you, has to be readjusted. You need confidence instead of it, because we don't want people to have low self-esteem. So we're not trying to swing the pendulum to the other side of it all. But you do want to get rid of that vanity, because vanity makes it's very hard to work with someone who's vain. It's very hard. It's almost impossible. You hate it. You don't want to do anything. You want nothing to do with them, because they're too full on themselves all the time, and their focus is all on what they're doing. And really, the focus should be on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, because he's the one who actually, he's the center of the universe. We're not. We're secondary characters, if not tertiary characters. Once you accept that, even in your own life, then you change the way you look at things. And you're happy to be here, and you're very grateful that you're given this opportunity. You're going to do your part and play your role to the best of your ability, knowing that this is serving a bigger picture, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's vanity, for example. And that's why saying alhamdulillah is the way you get rid of it. Because when you spend time praising Allah, then less time is spent praising yourself. So instead of praising me, so alhamd to me, it's hamd to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the praise is focused on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then it's not hard to conceptualize that. Not hard. What am I worthy of praising for? What am I worthy? You just think about yourself. I'm going to speak out loud in what I think. Why am I worthy of praise? For what? What really did I do? How much did I really contribute to what I have? Let's analyze this. How much? I was born, I contributed to who I was born to. I was contributed to the time my mother and my father spent, where I ended up growing up, the people who spent time educating me, the amount, the level of wealth my parents had that allowed me to do this, even the level of intelligence that allowed me to memorize things. I contributed nothing to any of this. It was just one opportunity after the other being offered. Whatever I offered is very dismal, very abysmal, very small amount. And I made a lot of mistakes giving it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still found ways to bail me out and make sure I got it done. So exactly what are you going to praise me for? So even if you do it, so that once you take time, you think about that deeply and profoundly, and you have that conviction, so very clear about yourself, so it doesn't matter. You can come up and tell me, oh, mashallah, jazakallah, it doesn't make a difference. You don't know me. I know me. So when you tell me something about me that you think, that's what you think. I know better. I know exactly who I am and what I've done and what do I deserve. So what you say won't affect me at all. So whether you're saying a lot, you are, or the worst, you're complete, it doesn't make a difference because I know exactly what it is that the hand that I was dealt, what I've done with it, where I am, where I should be going. And then you get rid of that. So that's what you have to do for your life. You have to figure out exactly, it becomes second nature after a while. You stop getting offended or allowing praise to make you vain. It just changes, because you change the way that you actually process the input that's coming to you from others. Kibr, for example, arrogance. The second biggest problem, right? This is what caused Iblis to be kicked out of. He thought he was better than others. So ujub is your view of yourself. It's between you and you. Kibr is between you and others. All right, very important distinction here. Ujub or vanity is how you view you and your understanding of you and what you think you. That has to be, you have to adjust that and become confident. Confidence is what we're looking for. We're not looking for low self-esteem. Confidence. Kibr, arrogance, when you think you're better than others, whether you're thinking better than one person or a lot of people, doesn't make that much of a difference. And doing it to one person is kibr. Doing it to a lot of people is racism, basically, but still, it's the same idea. We don't want to swing this over so you have inferiority complexes where you think that you're less than people and you have no. Well, you want something in the middle. You want humility. Together, you want humbleness altogether. That's what humbleness is. When you have confidence in yourself, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you and He destined you for Jannah, so you're confident in the fact that you can do it. And then you have that humility where you don't think you're better than others. You don't think you're less than others either. You look at everyone as, you have good assumptions of people though. So you don't think they're better, but you have good assumptions of them. And you have realism about yourself. See, I don't know your sin. I don't know. What do I know? I can assume, but as a Muslim, I don't assume the bad stuff. I assume the good stuff. But there's nothing to assume about me. I know me. I know my sins. I know my shortcomings. So why? There's nothing to assume. I know that I'm not doing well. I should be better. But I have no reason to assume bad things in you. So I have good assumptions in you. And I have the real assumptions in myself. So you don't have any reason to be arrogant. Because the only sins that you know for sure are your own. You don't know any other sins. Even if you've seen someone sinning in front of you, you still don't know. Because you don't know why they're doing it, what led them to do it, whether they'll be doing it for the rest of their lives, whether they will actually repent appropriately before they die, and you don't know anything. So you can't judge people. It's impossible. You can try, you'll fail. Don't judge others because you have no idea what led them to where they are, what hand they were dealt before, and what they're going to do with it eventually. They're still in the middle of the story. Why are you judging them now? The story's not over yet, just like yours isn't over yet. So how are we going to be arrogant in the midway? It's stupid. It's like if you're winning 1-0, the team that mocks the other team in the middle of the game, why? The game's not over yet. Don't do that. If you mock them now, then you may lose at the end, and then you're going to look really stupid. Don't do it. So don't wait until the game is over. The game is over, and we all die. And then there's no reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take He didn't ask any of us to be judges. He'll take care of the whole judgment piece, and He'll give us our proper spots. How do you get rid of arrogance? You do istighfar a lot. If you do a lot of istighfar, you're not. Why? Because istighfar makes you repent. And repentance is basically focusing on your sin. If you're focused on your sin, you have no time to focus on other people's sin. You can't be arrogant if you don't know people's sin. You don't assume bad things in them. You're focused on you. You can only start looking down at people if you look to see flaws. And we do that we look at people, look for a flaw to feel better than them or to feel that we are superior to them. You get rid of that by focusing on your own sin and not having bad assumptions in people, just assuming the best, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you to do. اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم. Right? The third one, riya, ostentation, wanting people to, clap for you, wanting people to praise you or recognize you, caring about people's opinions about you. You're doing things because you want to feel that you want to become popular. It's that pursuit of fame that today is such a big deal. This is probably this era's problem, right? This era is struggling with this probably more than the other diseases because of social media and what it was able to do. It brought forward this instantaneous fame. You can become famous so quickly for nothing. It used to be hard to become famous. It used to be okay. Like I used to, many generations ago, they would tell people, it's fine. Want to become famous? Go try and become famous. Because that meant you had to be really successful. Like you had to work really hard. By the time you've worked that hard, you inshallah figured out that it's not important what people think about you. But now, it's so easy to become famous. And for the silliest things, with completely no talent at all, with no intellectual product whatsoever, Just something completely mindless, mind-numbing. Wallahi, it's weird sometimes. These phenomena, it has to have to be studied. I hope that those who are getting into psychology and social study and socio-psychology look into this stuff. I don't understand. Like, it's very hard to comprehend what's actually occurring and who's actually becoming famous and why they're becoming famous and why do we care? Why did we care for so long about throwing this thing and getting it in these videos with hundreds of millions and people just throwing it? I don't know, why is that? I can't understand. Like, it's very hard to comprehend. Or someone just makes I don't know, these very simple, like 5-second, 10-second videos that have nothing in it besides some silly action that people end up holding on to, and that person becomes famous because of that one. I don't know. This is a problem. So Riyah is going to be a very big problem of this era. Like, you're going to have to struggle with that. The unfortunate piece of all this is that it's opposite. And again, I'm not going into all the details of this. I just want you to think about them. This is more of a thought-provoking lecture than it is in depth, because Tazkiyah is not something you can cover. These are scholars who've spent hundreds and hundreds of years explaining and teaching and educating, and you spend a whole lifetime learning this stuff. So it's not something that can be summarized. But I want you to think about them so that you can, inshallah, start growing intellectually and spiritually. The opposite of riyah is ikhlas. Ikhlas is the pinnacle of all of the Islamic acts of worship. It's the highest peak. There's nothing more profound. Without ikhlas, nothing matters. Without ikhlas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not interested in anything you do. Because the opposite of ikhlas is riyah, and then the major opposite is shirk. The major opposite of ikhlas is, because ikhlas leads to tawheed, and shirk, riyah leads to shirk. Because riyah means that you care about someone else's opinion similarly to how you care to Allah's opinion. And that's the musibah. The only eye that should matter to you is the eye of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looking at you. No, He's the only eye that should matter to you. And if you do good things and your heart at the beginning is, you hope to, the Prophet ﷺ to be happy with you, that's all right as well, because he's your teacher. So it's okay for teachers and for parents. But outside of that, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone else are just human beings, just people, just as lost, just drown, just all floating in the ocean of life, just as desperate and just as, lost as everyone else. So it shouldn't be, you learn from people, you benefit, you take what they have to offer, but that shouldn't be, riyah shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't be waiting for their recognition and no, that shouldn't be the case. And if it is, you have to wonder why. Why is it that I feel that way? Why do I care so much? Why am I doing something? Sometimes you'll be doing any act of worship or any deed, and millions of people are surrounding you, but you don't care, because in your heart, none of them matter to you. The only one that matters to you, some people have ikhlas in the middle of Hajj. In the middle of Hajj on Arafat, they're standing there, there's a million of people, doesn't matter. They don't see any of them, they don't feel any of them, they don't recognize any of them, they don't think about them. They're focused on Allah. And some people are standing in their room praying, hoping someone opens the door and sees them and says, MashaAllah, what am I? So riyah is a problem that exists inside. It doesn't matter. So you have to learn to practice it, you have to learn to get rid of that need. Why do I need? Why do I care? And obviously, one of the most important things that you're going to do in life is learning how to tame that piece, is achieving ikhlas, achieving sincerity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do you do that? Tasbih. Tasbih is what does that, because tasbih, in its essence, what it actually is, it's you telling yourself that He is exalted and everyone else isn't. That He is perfection and everyone else isn't. Why do I care about those who are just as flawed as I am? But the eye of the Al-Mawla Al-Jalil subhanahu wa ta'ala wahdahu, the one and the only, is looking at me. That's the only eye that matters. Every other eye is just as flawed as mine. Why do I care? So that takes a long time. Doesn't mean that you become rude, by the way, or disrespectful, or you're socially insensitive. No. That's all there because He tells you to be that, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wants you to be socially sensitive. He wants you to be socially aware, to care for people. But you're not doing it because you're scared of what people are going to think of you. You're doing it because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you to do it. It's a different reason. See, the motivation changes a lot. And when you change the motive, you change the longevity of this action. See, if I do things because I want people to like me, after a while, I'll get tired of people whether they like me or not. So I'll stop doing good things for them. Or if I don't like them anymore, I'll stop doing good things for them. Or if you see things change based on why I'm doing. But if I'm doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He never changes. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They like me, they don't like me, they're nice to me, they're kind to me, they hate me, they backstab me. It doesn't make a difference. I wasn't doing it for you to begin with. Like I wasn't doing it for you. I was not doing it for your sake. So it doesn't matter to me how you respond and what you do with it. There's a known story that this in the books where two Zahideen would come by one another. One was rich, the other one was poor. So the first one who had wealth, he gave wealth to the other one. He said, خُذْ لَا لَكْ, take it, it's not for you. فَقَالَ هَات لَا مِنْكَ, give it to me, it's not from you. Understand what I'm trying to say? To give it to you, it's not for you, it's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Take it, I'm not taking it from you, I'm taking it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is just an action. This is just an action where we're both observing the gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which obviously is a very high level of comprehension, but it's still important. And the final of the big four is envy. Envy, hasad, when you مِن شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدٍ, the evil that comes from an envious heart when you envy someone. Now, I'm not even going to talk about envy of dunya because I think that's very low and it's beneath you, and I hope you don't have it anymore. If you don't, you still do, get rid of it really quickly. You shouldn't envy people for dunya. Please don't. That is so beneath you, not even funny. Don't envy them for what they have, like possessions, and that's so wrong on so many levels that most scholars I knew didn't even take time to talk about it. It's like if you're still envying people for dunya, get out, go figure, go learn and come back, because you don't envy people for dunya. They talk about envying people for knowledge, or envying them for issues of akhirah, for closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's where actually it becomes important. But yes, obviously we have to talk about envy of dunya because it's where most people start. But you have to learn that that's not important. How? You have to comprehend. You have to comprehend that it doesn't matter. That this is not something worthy of envy. Like what people have, the possessions, not worthy of your envy. It's not worthy. It's nothing. It's not valuable. What's valuable is something completely different. So you may run into someone like that who has a lot of knowledge, who has a lot of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has achieved a lot in their life. You envy them. That's okay. To have the ghibta piece, meaning I hope to be like them, but not to hope that they fail, or not to look for their flaws, or to wait for them to slip so that you can finally feel good about yourself and you can finally play, I knew it that they're a fraud. Wow. Everyone who turns out to do something wrong, you always have the people coming out of the woodworks. I knew it, they were a fraud from the time I saw them. No, you didn't. You were just envious and jealous the whole time. You just actually exposed yourself. Habibi, you've always been jealous of them, and now you're happy finally that they made the mistake, and now you can stand up and say they are bad, and you can actually take some credit and say, I knew it. Right? You can take some credit. You're actually going to praise yourself. You're actually going to praise yourself on the corpse of someone who just made a mistake. Ya Latif. That like the complexity of the sin is disgusting. Like they slipped and fell and made a mistake. Not only are you going to expose it, you're going to exploit it to actually take some credit for yourself by saying, I knew it. That is like so complexly horrible. No, because here's the thing. If you end up achieving something in your life and you slip and fall, you make a mistake. Think about what you want people to do at that moment. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of you. Say Ameen. But if you were to do it, if you were to achieve great things and then you make a mistake, we're all the possibility, we're all subject to making mistakes. We can do something wrong. Some of us Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us a great blessing where it's all concealed, and some of us it'll get caught openly. How do you want people to deal with it? What do you want people to say? How do you want people to go about it? Do the same thing to others. So subhanAllah, just these reactions that we see, they talk a lot about how we feel and what we think and what is actually going on. That person was always jealous. They're happy to see the person that they were jealous of fall, and now they're going to cash in and put their dagger and stand on the corpse and enjoy it for a moment. And that is a huge, yes, that person is sinful, but you are now equally sinful. The person is equally sinful because you've just done. You've actually compounded so many wrong things all at once. That person at least made one mistake. You made like three. All hidden, and you've held on to them for a very long time. These are the four big ones. If you get rid of these four, vanity and arrogance and ostentation and envy, the rest will all just kind of dissolve on their own. They're very hard to get rid of. For a healthy soul, they're hard to get rid of. They're there. They're a part of who you are. Don't tell me I'm not envious of people. You're lying. You're lying. Everyone's envious of somebody. It just maybe has not been presented properly to you yet, or you've learned to kind of disregard it, or you've learned to ignore it. But everyone somewhere, unless you've actually identified who you're envious of and learned to get rid of it, how do you get rid of envy? It's the concept of jama'ah. The concept of jama'ah is how you do it. You and I are wearing the same jersey. Just different numbers. The same jersey, you're on my team. So if you're doing well, that means my team is doing well. So I'm not envious of you. I want you to do better. Because if you do better, our team is most likely to do better. So I'm happy. If you're doing well, I want you to do better. But if I see you as the opposite team, then yeah. Or if I'm an extremely selfish player, I want to be the star of the team, then I want you to do really badly so that I continue to be the star of the team. But if I understand the idea of jama'ah, of the group, then I want you to do better because you doing better helps me. It helps me, it helps my team, because I care about the team. I don't care about me. It's about the bigger picture. It's about the ummah. It's about the nation of people, of human beings. You stop seeing, and the more you grow, you stop seeing even two groups of people. You just see humanity and life itself as one big team. We want everyone to succeed. We want everyone to make it. We want everyone to actually do better. Because the better they do, the better we're going to do all collectively, because you see them as a group. That takes time, though. Again, to get that feeling out, you have to comprehend that, and you have to practice it. One of the things I gave some of the students to learn, and I was given when I was younger, is you think of someone that you really envy. You take your time. You spend some time, you think of someone that you envy. It takes some self-analysis, by the way, and some you have to be honest with yourself and actually come up with it. You find someone that you envy, and then you make dua for them. And that will literally, like, it's hard. It's like yanking your heart out of your chest. It's very difficult. Your nafs does not want to do it. It can't. I remember one of the people who did it. He's like, yeah, I make dua for them, but I don't really mean it. So that doesn't count. Like, I said, make dua for them. Actually, make dua that they do better. They're doing well. You want them. You ask Allah subhanahu for them to do even better than what they're doing right now, to exceed you even more. It's hard. The nafs doesn't like doing that. But when you do it, you learn. You learn about yourself. You learn about what's going wrong inside, and that this is not a thing. You're competing not with them. Your competition with them, وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ, is not competing hoping that they fail. It's competing hoping that everyone actually succeeds, but you're just trying to be better. You're using the competition as motivation to be better. You're doing well, I'm going to try and do well as well, because I need some motivation. We all need to be motivated, but you're not hoping people fail. Just things to think about as you go along. Other diseases, indifference and ghafla. Yani obviously if you're here, hopefully you don't have a lot of this, because if you're here, that means you do care. Those who aren't here, yani, this is their problem. Ghafla, those who just don't care. They don't care. There's not something on their radar, never thought about it, aren't thinking about it. You can bring it up to them, they'll dismiss it. You talk about it, they'll leave. Yani, they'll stop spending time with you if you actually talk about it too much. They don't care, not their thing. Ghafla is a very hard problem to fix. It's actually the only problem that I don't think has a solution. There's no fixing this. The only fix for this is la samahullah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you all, a musibah. Like a really hard slap in the face from life. Life is really good. It'll just slap you really hard. Throw you that curveball right in the face. Just, you have to get up, and you've lost something you love, or you failed at something you were good at, or something's gone, and then you have to reevaluate, reassess, and you take things seriously, and that goes away. So don't wait. So what you can do, don't wait until that happens. If you're indifferent about something, change it now. If there's something that you don't care about, you're not spending time, you're taking for granted, you're entitled towards, take some time and analyze that, and then go back and say, no, I care for this, is important. I love it, I'm very happy, alhamdulillah. This is a great blessing that I have that I should be taking more interest in, and I should be more grateful for, and I should use appropriately. So you do that. To get rid of your ghafla, you have to kind of become, you have to care. You have to start caring about what you have, and identifying, acknowledging, wow, now I'm healthy, alhamdulillah, I have a family, I have opportunity, I have potential, it's all there. That can be easily forgotten. You're safe, as the Prophet said, if you have enough food in your fridge for the night, and you're not scared for your life, then there's nothing that's missing. You have nothing to be complaining about. If there's enough food for you to eat tonight, and you're not scared that someone's going to bomb your house or raid you, then you have nothing to be complaining about. You're good, you have it all. You have it all, everything you need. So everything beyond that is just, we're indifferent towards. We don't care. Start caring about it. Shuh, selfishness, right? The biggest problem in the world, selfishness. The nafs loves this. This is what the nafs is good at. It'll always get you to be selfish as possible, because it's selfish. You don't like selfishness. If you spend time with people and they're selfish, you get bored of them really quickly, and you see their flaws, and you don't want to spend time with them anymore. It's only selfless people that you're willing to spend time with, because their selflessness fulfills your selfishness, right? So it works out really nicely. If I'm selfish and you're selfish, then we're going to be fighting over the piece of bread. But if you're selfless and I'm selfish, it works amazing. That way you're giving me and I'm taking it, and it all works out. So really, it's a problem, for all of us. Selflessness is something that we have to learn to do. We have to learn to actually, which is what service is. Remember we did a full lecture just talking about service. Service is ubudiyya. Service is the opposite of this. It's just, you serve instead of you trying to take for yourself. You're trying to give others. You're trying to see. You're finding the joy in helping someone else and serving someone else rather than serving yourself. Are you able to find that joy, or are you still, kind of tunnel visioned into taking what you want? Stinginess, al-bukhl, anger, al-ghadab, hatred, al-bughd. I'm not going to go through all of them, explain them. I'm going to give you some time. These are things. These are the problems. By the way, anger is it's a disease. It's a disease. If you're angry, and if you have anger, at least know why. At least don't lie about it, and learn how to control it. Know why. Why are you angry? Yeah. You figure out what makes you angry. And when you do get angry, why? What's the reason? There's always a reason. There's always something in the background that you've bottled up into this very compressed oxygen tank, and every once in a while you let it open a bit, and that face and that sound and that color of your skin tone comes out, and you start. Why? There's a lot of rage. Why is there rage? You have to learn to get rid of that rage. You have to learn to kind of diffuse a lot of why that. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, "La taghdab." It's not like I can't control when I get angry. I understand that. That's not what he was saying, alayhi salatu. He's not telling you to control an emotion. He's telling you to control what you do and what you say when you get angry. It's not an excuse, by the way, just as a kind of a FYI for you. Not an excuse. Never an excuse, especially guys. Well, actually both, honestly. Lately it's been both. Like you can't come and say, well, I was angry. Okay, so are you trying to tell me that's your excuse? Doesn't work. No. Anger does not work as an excuse Yawm al-Qiyamah. At all. Not a bit. Not even a little. Not even a little. You're angry? That's your problem. Your whole job was to control your anger. You can't come and say, well, I said this when I was angry. Okay, so what are you waiting for? Like a pat on the back or an applause? There's nothing. You said it. What you were at the time means nothing. Doesn't mean anything. That only means something to you. That only means something to you. You're the one who was angry. I don't know and I don't care. You said that. That's what you said. You can't come and say, well, I was angry. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't care what the emotion attached to the thing that you said. You said it. You should be accountable for the word that came out of your mouth and the action that you performed. Anger is not an excuse. Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't there, at some point, your emotion charge, in a way you can't really control even at that point?
You're usually mentally ill at that point. Yeah. So, no, honestly, if someone's mentally ill, that's a different story. Mental illness I'm not talking about that. If there's a mental illness somewhere in the middle where you actually need therapy and you need medication, probably it's a whole different story. But people who don't have that specific problem, no. Anger is not a good excuse for that. But yeah, you'll find 1 in a million, 1 in a couple 100,000 people who may have a problem that is so severe that they can't control their emotion. But that's not, it's still it's very, very rare. And it usually needs professionals to deal with it. So just kind of as I say, yeah. So a professional would do that. So you'd need professional input, meaning you need to speak to either a psychiatrist or a psychologist or someone who can point out to you if you're mentally ill or not. And honestly, they're very good at that. And they can tell you when they sit with you that you're fine, you have no mental illness. You just need to figure that out. Yeah. No. It's No. They know what anger is, though, and they're able to diagnose when someone has rage problems, because you can always figure out so people, for example, and this is not the point this will take. So, for example, you'll have people who have in their history abuse of some sort of abuse, like the chronic abuse when they were children, whether it's physical or sexual or mental even or verbal. That builds up a lot of anger, like over a long period of time for certain people. So they become people who are actually, and these are individuals who you notice who are always angry and are very easily made angry. And when they become angry, they explode like something is completely different. And those individuals usually have, there's something there. So once they are gone, when they go and speak to those who can help them, they'll find a way to diffuse that anger. So even if they're not Muslim, diffusing anger is still something that psychology today does pretty well. So you can always go and get that. But when it comes to this, I'm talking about the run-of-the-mill, the average person within this room. There's always going to be a few spikes and different, the bell contributes. There's always going to be some people towards the end of every spectrum of every single thing I talked about who has a specific problem that needs to be dealt with. But for the majority of human beings, we get angry sometimes, and there are reasons for it, and we have to deal with it. But there's other problems with PTSD and issues of, that's different, and that's not what I'm trying to. And the same thing goes for bughd, same thing for lust is another problem. And then gluttony, tama' is another one. And then finally, laziness, which is the most enjoyable of all of these sins by far. But again, these are all diseases of the heart. They're all diseases, they're all problems that we have, that we need to learn to get rid of. Again, a lot of them go away when you get rid of the first 4. Like laziness just kind of disappears. But it'll be there for the rest of it. So lust is basically sexual desire, right? Okay. Yeah, so lust or any desire that is based on consumption. So it could be sexual or non-sexual as well. It could be also, but mostly they use it to describe sexual desire. Gluttony is more for food or possessions or materialistic things. But they're all, one way or another, similar to one another. Su'ul dhann, bad assumptions on people. It's another disease of the heart. So here's some remedies before we kind of wrap up. So establishing prayer is a remedy. Actually doing it right is a remedy. Like it actually is there. Salah is there to allow you to soar. So you can elevate your nafs, and so you can actually perform your job. Like if you want to perform your, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you here, you're going to fulfill that reason or that purpose. Fulfilling that purpose, salah is there. You do it 5 times a day. Is because it does that. In the salat tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar, right? Prayer indeed will remove you away from fahsha and munkar if you do it appropriately. The problem with us is that we just don't do it right. We reduced concepts, or we're stuck in a place where we're struggling with it, or we're coercing ourselves towards it. We're not actually utilizing it appropriately. So everything in prayer, I'm going to go through this really quickly. Again, we've talked about this in the earlier session, so go back to them if you want to listen to them in a bit more detail. Physical transitions that aid mental or spiritual transitions. That's what prayer is. So every movement is there to aid a mental change. So you're doing different things in salah. Salah is not boring because you're actually doing different things. Like you're standing, you're doing one thing. When you're doing ruku', you're doing something different. When you stand up again, a third thing. When you do a sujood, it's a fourth thing. When you sit down, it's a fifth thing. So there's these transitions. You're doing different things. You're thinking about different things. You're looking at yourself and the world around you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in different ways. So it's actually quite diverse. So it keeps you quite engaged. But the reason that you move is that you want the physical appearance to match the mental or spiritual appearance. You want them to be the same. And that's why we move in salah. That's why we don't just sit down and meditate, right? So and prayer is a means for qiyam, right? So standing, for example. I'll just go through these quickly. You actually stand there and you recite the Quran. You recite back to Allah the lessons He taught you. That's why you stand up. You stand up, it's like you're a student in a classroom. You're reading back the lesson to the one who taught you the lesson. You're proving that you actually learned. That yes, I've acknowledged your book, I accept it, and I actually am fully adherent to it, that I've memorized it word for word. And you recite it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in recognition that this is what you believe in and this is who you are. And that's why you do it standing up, because this is basically a contract, a covenant between you and God in terms of you gave it to me and I've accepted it and I've memorized it. And when you do ruku', for example, ruku' is there to exalt God. It's exalting. It's actually a form. It's actually a physical form of exaltation. It's not submission. It's exaltation, meaning you are recognizing that the one that you are bowing towards or for is way beyond you. Is much stronger than you, is higher than you, is of a different nature than you. That's why you bow. You don't bow down to anyone else. Anyone else is the same. That's why Muslims never bow to their kings. They didn't bow to their kings. Why? Because kings are just human. So why am I bowing to you? I can do other things to show my loyalty. I'll give you my covenant, but I won't bow. I bow to Allah because that is me. That's basically you acknowledging that I am not similar. I am not equal. I am not at the same level in any form. That's why you say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim wa bihamdi. That's why you're not supposed to actually read Quran there. The Prophet ﷺ tells, don't read Quran in ruku'. Why? Because that's not what it's for. That's not what it's for. Quran is always, it's beautiful, it's always recited, but not ruku', because that's not what it's for. Ruku' is for exaltation of God, which is basically tasbih. You get rid of riya with that, right? So every act of every movement in salah actually gets rid of one of the diseases of the heart if you do it right. When you stand up, Sami Allahu liman hamidah, you show gratitude. You show gratitude standing up straight, because that's one of the blessings that you and I, as human beings, out of all the mammals, we stand up straight on two. So you don't, when I show gratitude for a blessing, you don't show it groveling on the ground, because that doesn't seem like you're blessed. Like if I'm thanking you, but I look horrible and my physical appearance is horrible, it's kind of making you look bad. Because if I'm thanking you for the blessing and I look bad, that means your blessing wasn't that great. So if I'm going to thank you for something, I better look well, and I better be standing up straight, and that at least shows that your blessing makes a difference for me. So when you stand up, you say Alhamdulillah, Sami Allahu liman hamidah, and you spend the time showing gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praising Allah, because you're grateful. You're doing it standing up because that's this is one of the pieces of evidence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed you. When you prostrate, that's where you supplicate, that's where you make dua. Why? Because you don't speak to Allah as you speak to another human being. You don't come and ask for things as a grocery store or you're in a job interview. You speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the proper understanding of the difference of status. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Lord and I'm the servant. So I don't speak, I grovel, I go down, I put my head on the ground. I completely humiliate myself in asking Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's the difference of status between me and Him. That's why you put your head on the ground, you don't read Quran either. You make dua. You make dua, you ask, you supplicate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the things that you want and all the things that you hope for, and you speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during sujood. And when you sit, you ask for forgiveness. Because if you're looking at someone sitting, that's how you sit there kind of some people who are embarrassed or ashamed, they sit that posture when you're sitting that way, you're showing a certain degree of shame or embarrassment or a feeling that you didn't do well. So you sit there and you ask Allah for istighfar. That's why Rabbi ghfirli, Rabbi ghfirli, Rabbi. You're asking for forgiveness. So you can see all these between hamd and tasbih and istighfar. That's it. And you're praying in jama'ah. That's the 4 major sins are gone. The 4 major sins, you fix them. If you do that right for a couple of years, you get rid of them completely. But if you don't do it right for any amount of time, then they just sit around and these actions become completely meaningless and empty and they don't do anything for us. Dhikr is another way of remedies of the heart. You do a lot of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you should always have a wird, always have a certain amount of tasbihat that you do on a daily basis. And build them up. Start with something simple, 300 or 400 a day, and then build them up to 500. Every couple of weeks, go up 100. Just build your remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and give it a variety. So do istighfar and do salah ala nabi alayhi salatu wasalam and tahleel and do the tasbih and hawqala and hasbala and all the different acts of dhikr that you can do. Service is a very important remedy of the heart. Learn to serve. That's what you're here for. You're only in alignment with yourself. You're only in harmony with yourself when you serve, because that's what we are. I'm an abd. So I'm only in alignment and in harmony with me when I serve others, because that's what I am. Now I'm doing something that actually reflects who I am appropriately. So that you're synchronizing. It works out nicely. It feels good. So that's why it feels. That's why when you actually serve people properly, have the right idea, it feels really good. It feels good to help people and stand by them, because you're just synchronizing and harmonizing who you are. You're abd of Allah. You're a servant and you're serving. Thumbs up. Now you've got it already. This is who you are and this is what you're doing. When you do something different, that means you're messing it all up and it doesn't work anymore. Reading the Quran. The Quran is There's nothing better and more profound than reading the Quran and loving the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is a segue for next week's session. We've run out of time, I guess. I did have a group discussion attached to this, but I don't think we're going to obviously have any time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran when he describes those who stand by him, he uses the phrase يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُ, those whom he loves and those whom love him back, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the core. This is the wording in Surah Al-Ma'idah that is filled with rulings and filled with ayat that talk about jihad and talk about battle and talk about yuhibbuhum wa yuhibbunahu. It comes down to the fact that he loves them and they love him back. And this love is real and it's meaningful. And it's a part of who they are. Here's a routine for you if you don't have one. Make sure every day you have qiyam, meaning you have 2 to 4 rak'at that you pray. Even if you do it at the masjid after Isha or you just do it before you go to sleep, give yourself 2 minutes. Pray something besides the fard, besides the 5 prayers, just before you sleep or just before Fajr. Pray 2 rak'at qiyam. Hold on to it and do it all the time, and it'll mean a lot to you in your life and it'll make a big difference in who you are. Have a hizb. Hizb is the amount of Quran that you recite daily. Even if you're not a hafidh, you don't know the Quran, make sure you have at least a page, half a page, anything, anything. Any amount of Quran they can recite on a daily. This is something Prophet ﷺ actually told the Sahaba to do and held them to it. And told them if you miss it, make up for it the next day. Have a wird, have a certain amount of tasbihat, of dhikr, of salah ala nabi alayhi salam, tahleel, tasbih that you do on a daily basis, and then build them up, as we talked about. Supplication, make sure you make dua every single day of your life until the day you die. Make sure every day you have dua, and do not allow a day go by without actually making dua maybe multiple times. And do it especially when you're making sujood, because that's what it's there for. Make sure that you figure out your acts of service. How are you serving those around you? How are you serving your community? Make sure that's clear to you. Make sure you work hard on achieving that, because that's really what we're here to do. And then make sure you have daily learning. Every day, make sure there's 10 minutes at least where you're learning something new within your deen. Obviously, inshallah, you'll be learning a lot in your school and your academic prospects. That's great. But make sure you learn something in your deen, even if it's a podcast or a shaykh that you enjoy and you listen to 10 minutes of a talk. You just think about it, you reflect. Make sure you're increasing. You read something, maybe a hadith or maybe part of a book that you have. Make sure you daily. Don't allow a day go by without increasing a little bit of your knowledge about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught. So that's what I have to offer you, inshallah. And with that, we'll continue with Allah ta'ala next week. This is a lifelong journey. It never actually ends. There's no point where you're done and you can say, I have fully purified myself. It doesn't happen. It just keeps on going until you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair. Wa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Barakallahu feekum.